So, One Battle After Another is the latest film written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. And this is, I dare say, this might be my favorite film of the year, just because this is a film that is so perfectly poignant for this moment in time, for like this desire to keep on fighting and for revolution, and without even just like explicitly, even though it is reflecting a very familiar type of America, it doesn't specifically like bring up like the exact politics of our era, but rather more not quite like fictionalized, but more of like kind of fictionalized enough so that there's definitely like a familiar political vibe to it that feels very appropriate, very accurate, and it's just alive and angry. And it's the type of film that you want for this moment in time. You don't want films that just, if they're going to address certain politics like this, to like pull their punches. And Paul Thomas Anderson, who is in full control here of this big film, shooting it for IMAX, and it just it comes alive. It feels like that type of cinema that really punches on a hard level. I dare say this might even be my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. So the film, based on a Thomas Pynchon's Vineland novel, which is it's very Pynchon in the way that it diverts all over the place and just kind of keeps finding weird stuff to do with its characters. It's very much like it's very much. I have not read Vineland, but I have read other Thomas Pynchon novels, and I can see that that level of inspiration here. So the whole film is about it starts by following these two revolutionaries who are played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and Leonardo DiCaprio plays Bob, and the woman he falls in love with, played by Teyana Taylor, is Beverly Hills. And the two of them, they love revolution. They love, raiding immigration camps to like free immigrants. They love blowing up banks and government buildings to make their point clear. And once they finish their job, they immediately go into sex. So like the whole film just starts with like with bangs, like both literal explosive bangs and sexual bangs between these characters, sometimes in the same scene. And what I love about the way that it establishes their characters is that they're already radicalized. They do not set up like, oh, it was these chain of events that led us to, assembling all these rebels to try to break into immigration camps and fight back against the government. No, it's easy to understand, they make their little declarations in between their jobs. You can see it there. And man, they love it. They are so horny for each other. And they have such sexual energy that the pursuing character of Colonel Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, he has like this perfect look of just being constantly frustrated and angry. Even he is like, he can't resist Beverly Hills. The more that he looks at her, he's willing to let her get away with anything, so long as he can just, watch her and just be horny for her, to a very creepy degree. And it gets much creepier as the film goes on by really hammering home the point that this Lockjaw guy is just a disgusting person. Right from the first scene, the very first scene where the two of them meet in an immigration camp is just, oh, you you really hate this guy. You find him just filthy and disgusting, and you can't wait for him to get his comeuppance. So things go awry with the revolution, and there's a whole chain of events that spiral out of control, and it eventually leads to Bob basically trying to like flee with his daughter, who grows up to be a 16-year-old played by Chase Infinity. And Willa has kind of grown used to the lifestyle of like kind of like somewhat living on the lam and, trying to cover her tracks by taking influence from Bob, who still has a little bit of those revolutionary pangs in his personality, but he's also, it's been 16 years and he's kind of fallen out with the group, and he's just kind of, he's very like weathered and doesn't really feel like he can get back into the swing of things, especially when the revolution comes again, when Lockjaw comes a knocking. So there's a whole bunch of like unresolved elements that he's got to deal with both his wife, who has gone missing, and confessing the truth to his daughter, and coming to terms with how he views revolution, and basically trying to find some way to keep fighting back, because the whole point, I think, of the film is to establish how, keeping up this political fight, it's all about endurance. It's all about hanging in there. And this is the type of film that it sounds very serious, and it does get pretty gritty and brutal at times. But it's also incredibly funny because this is the type of film that can focus on that desire for revolution and rebellion, but also kind of laugh at how it might fall out of favor and how you might grow weary of it. Because it's, I think probably one of the perfect scenes that encapsulates this is when Leonardo DiCaprio's character of Bob is grown up with Willa, and he's a drunk, he's smoking weed, and like the most revolutionary thing that he does is watching Battle of Algiers while smoking weed, which is like, which is like a great reference because obviously, you know, Battle of Algiers is a highly political film, which undoubtedly had some influence in making one battle after another. But also, you know, there's a lot of people who talk a lot about it and don't really take in its messaging as well. Some people actually look at Battle of Algiers as kind of like getting an idea of terrorism rather than taking any of the political implications away from that type of film. So the fact that it can mock people who do want revolution while still making you care for them a little bit, I think is just great, especially because Bob's character, he basically calls up like this special hotline number that you have to speak in code words, and he's forgotten them all because he loses his daughter Willa and he's got to try to find her, so he's getting in contact with all the old rebels and is just struggling to like remember the code words and figure out what to do, and he's a mess. And it's like you want to laugh at him, but you also feel bad for him too because he really does want to protect his daughter and he wants to make the world a better place, and he's just trying to, you know, as the title implies, you know, just get through the next day and fight another battle. And I think there are some like great there is some great comedic relief in the film, specifically in Benicio del Toro's character of Carlos, who plays a local sensei who is and Del Toro just like he effortlessly just like leans into this comedy. Very deadpan, very much in like the same way that he was in like the Venetian Scheme. But he plays a character who's so used to the military rolling in and immigration raids and the calls for like political violence that when his town starts going to hell and like it starts getting raided by the military, he has a plan in place, and he's so sure that his plan is going to work that he's willing to like, you know, help out Bob in between and have a beer with him while he's in the middle of his own little escape plans. Like, cause I love how like weathered Carlos is, where he's gotten used to the idea of going on the run and, you know, creating diversions and you know, ushering like immigrants away from like ICE agents, and like how he's become so like accustomed to it that he's just like, yeah, it's like this is just what I do. Because at one point, like Bob is really starting to get back into the swing of things, and he starts going like, yeah, Viva Revolution, and Carlos just like, yeah, I've been doing this the whole time. So that they have a great dynamic. I love their little back and forth, especially how Carlos he's very casual, but he's also doing everything he can to help Bob, in like a very like, you know, like kind of helpful way. Not like he's like some member of a resistance, but just like a pal doing the best that he can for his friend. Like immediately once he helps Bob out with an escape, he's just waiting for him in the car. It's like, hey, I got some beers for you. Hey, where do you need to go? You got to find your daughter? Cool. I'm with you all over. I'm all over this. But there is much more sternness, I think, in another one of Beverly Hills' allies called Deandra, played by Regina Hall, who is she is pretty strict, and she mostly spends most of the film with Willa trying to divulge as much of the information of the past so that Willa has enough strength to go on, while still just, you know, being very hard on this girl, realizing that Willa might not be taking this as seriously as everyone else is, and that she needs to kind of grow up and just realize the danger that she's in, especially with this creep of Lockjaw just coming after them. Which I think probably the most laughs you will get in this film is from Sean Penn's character with his like dorky ass fascist haircut and his just like his wrinkly face that looks like it's about to pop. And probably the best joke in the film is when he's asked to join this underground fascist group, which has a name so ridiculous that I will not reveal it here. But I will say, when they do reveal it, the name of this underground fascist group and the little chant they have going for it, I I struggled to keep my laughter in, and like a lot of people could not hold it. Like they were cracking up at this, and I think that's such like a perfect aspect too, because there are fascist movements like the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo movement. They all have like silly, ridiculous, dumb names so that people that they think people will take them less seriously. And I think it's perfectly inserted into this film in like a very clever way. And I think that goes for like just about everything else about this film, is that it feels like it's hitting right on the nail. It's hitting the nail on the head of a lot of the political aspects that we experience nowadays without overtly stating like, who is exactly behind this and what is motivating this specifically in the news. Like we see it everywhere. And Paul Thomas Anderson is just kind of basically taking the political temperature of this moment and applying it into a film that is very alive and thrilling and action driven and offbeat and ridiculous and poignant all at the same time. Because the film runs nearly 3 hours, and it kind of breezes by just because you have no idea where the story is going. It feels very much kind of like like more of like an ensemble piece, kind of like a like No Country for Old Men, where it's just kind of showing all these different perspectives and how everything starts going awry, and that the best laid plans don't always work out, and it just keeps building on itself in a very fascinating and funny and exciting way that you just can't wait to see where it goes next. So yeah, for almost being 3 hours, it breezed by. And not to mention, oh god, I really love the performance of Chase Infinity playing Willa. I think just like the passionate drive, and I think she's kind of like the key to making this film work. Like, don't get me wrong, Leonardo DiCaprio's performance here is great. I love how he just becomes like a very humiliating figure. Benicio del Toro has a great stoic comedic performance. Regina Hall has a great grit. Teyana Taylor has a sexiness to her. Sean Penn is just a almost cartoonish villain that you love to hate so much. But man, I think Chase Infinity really brings it all together, because it ultimately comes down to her generation being tasked with carrying on the fight. And it's rather charming and very, very hopeful that the film, positions like these characters like, like Regina Hall's character and Leonardo DiCaprio's character as wanting to basically give the next generation the tools to keep fighting, because it is a method of because it's all about endurance. If you want to fight fascism, you can't give up. It's going to be hard. And I think, especially with the other, anti-fascist media this year, like Andor, it really stresses how you need to stick with it, and how it's not going to, you're probably not going to get like a perfect happy ending to all this, but you do need to keep up that struggle and to keep up that fight and to make sure that the next generation has the tools that they need to keep that fight going as well. I also love the ultimate ending of the film does have, another aspect that is worth highlighting, which is that fascists will eat each other if you give them enough time. Which I don't really want to reveal specifically what happens to Lockjaw, but they do have a comeuppance for him in the best possible way that highlights how, if you just keep fighting, you'll live to see another day, and you'll live to see your generation keep on going. Whereas the fascists who just like bow to power, they will not go far. They are going to get attacked by each other. They're going to stumble, and when they stumble hard and ultimately ruin their lives. So I love how all these different aspects come together in the film in such like a pitch perfect way. There's never a moment where it feels like they're trying too hard for comedy, or that they're trying too hard for like with like a car chase or a shootout or an explosive scene. It always feels like just the right moments for this type of film to work. Like when there's like a chase through city streets after an attack on a bank, it's exciting, it's intense, it feels like, like a well-made cop thriller. And then when you get to like scenes of Leonardo DiCaprio running across rooftops and scurrying around trying to get like a signal for his phone and just struggling to get in contact with his daughter, it turns into kind of a very comical cat-mouse chase where you have no idea where it's going. And it's very thrilling, it's exciting, and it's the type of film that we need right now at this moment that I think is going to encapsulate so much of both this year and this decade. And I think that Paul Thomas Anderson, without directly pointing out the targets, has captured the right vibe and how we're going to look back on this era where we're kind of seeing like this bigger fight for rights in our life. So yeah, it is very much a highly political film, and it's not afraid to show some teeth. So, and that's exactly what I wanted out of a type of film like this. So yeah, one battle after another. It's a damn great film, and I think it's definitely going to be on my list for the best movies of the year, and definitely a top contender for the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie ever made.